So as we've said many times now, this stuff is all going to be sources for our particles. Now, I don't have velocity though. We sure as hell want our particles to be gaining velocity from the pieces they're falling off of, but there isn't one. So let's fix that. So after we unpack it here, I mean, there is technically a velocity attribute on the packed pieces already, but for reasons I won't get into too much, that's the velocity and angular velocity of, or at least there was an angular velocity. I don't even see it anymore. But in any case, we can just do a trail SOP here now. After we unpack it, do a trail and say compute velocity. And now we have it. This is the velocity visualizer. And you can see we get it. And it's especially important that we do it this way because you can see how it looks weird here. That's because these pieces are twisting. They're spinning around themselves. So different sides of it. Imagine a ball that's spinning. The part on the far side of the ball is going from left to right, and the ball on the front side is going from right to left. They shouldn't all just have the same direction, which is what we would get if we had unpacked just the velocity here. See how they're all straight now, even though they're spinning, because they're going one direction, but it's not accounting for the spinning, and we don't want that. We want the spinning. So there you go. I said I wasn't going to say it, but you tricked me into saying it anyway. Now, a problem though. Problem is the first frame. First frame is now an error. It wasn't an error before when this was off. It's an error now because the trail is doing a backwards difference. It's saying, where are the points now? Where were they before? That's the velocity. You went from there to there. Now there is no previous frame on the first frame. So we need to basically tell it to not include frame 0. There's, we can turn this on, but we can actually do it an even more elegant way that's going to help us further down the line anyway. So go back to our rigids area here, where we have our points. Because ultimately this is what's failing. When we have, again, trail, well, there, it's already on. When we have that on the first frame and it's failing, it's because this is failing. It's because this is not finding a frame 0. When we go to frame 0, there isn't one. So what we can do is we can do a time shift. A time shift would allow us to just say clamp to the first frame. That would work fine. Let's do a time blend. Time blend, let's put them all under that. A time blend will allow us to determine, well, first of all, it'll let us do that. It'll let us clamp the first frame, but it'll also allow us to determine in between frames. Currently, when you make a time blend, it comes in with some default settings. I'm not sure if these will be the default settings by the time you're looking at it, but you can, either way, what we want the time to do is, well, don't really change anything. We don't want to remap any of the time, but make sure the frame range is still our entire frame range. So I'm going to say RF start to RF end. We should see the full frame range. Notice that before I did that, it's at 100. And when it had that, it would have stopped. Well, it can behave bizarrely. Post extend, post hold, for example, it would just stop doing anything. So you would have even thought that it was doing the right thing here. Yeah, it can be tricky. 100 should be the end. So the same frame range. This is for remapping if I wanted to like slow down things or whatever, but we don't want to do that. So why am I using the retime then? Because I want this. I want the interpolation here. Later on, if we want to do subframes, if we want to take our smoke and say, I need you to solve 2 substeps per frame, we're going to need our collisions to be in the right place on those subframes. Currently, without this, well, I'll just show you. Here's what we have currently. If you click, or just watch me, I guess, if I click global animation options and I turn on turn off rather integer frame values. I'm going to change the step to 0.1. Now when I scrub in the timeline, you can see there's these decimal. So I get to see subframes. But look what happens as I drag my mouse. All this time is going by and nothing's changing. It's still only reading the integer frames. I mean, that's bad. Because a subframe, when Pyro asks for a subframe later on this and on this, it's going to get the same collision. Even though they should have moved, of course. Turning on the time blend will fix that mostly. But look what happens. See these flipping things? See how they flip around like that? That's wrong too. So we introduced a new problem. Easy to fix though. Interpolate rotation of normals, quaternions, and transforms. I don't know why this is turned off right now when I make my time blend. Maybe that will be fixed. All you gotta do, turn it on. That's it. Now, no more flipping. So now we have perfect subframe representation of our geometry, while also ensuring that if I ask for frame 0, I'll actually just get frame 1. Great. So I'm going to click this again. I'm going to go back to integer frame values because this is just for the, the playback and the viewport. This will not affect the actual pyrosim itself. And I'll turn use velocity when interpolating position because why not? Just because it's the default. Everything really should be the default. That's the main thing I really should just say to you. Everything on here should be the default. It's not the default when it's bold like that. That means it's the default. But the main things we wanted was the interpolate. We wanted to make sure the frame range is the entire frame range and not just a frame 100. And there you go. So that's it for that. So now coming back to our particles, our first frame works fine. Also, I should mention, if you go to our unpack, we can transfer over the color, like so. If you just want to keep seeing it looking like that. Our debris source isn't doing any subframe, so that whole thing doesn't help that. It's just going to help us later on when we're doing collisions. But we need to cache this. So I'm going to say file cache. I'll say file cache debris source. And this is where we're going to use our data. So data slash, I'll say sim, or rather I'll just say data slash $OS, which is the operator string, which is the name of the node, slash version, and I'll say version, I'll come back out here and copy the sim version. I mean, you could have a debris version if you wanted to make it even more granular, but I'm just going to say paste other absolute references, where it makes this little expression that reads that parameter between backticks. And I'll say backslash OS again dot frame number $f dot bgo.sc. So that's a whole bunch of stuff. You can always middle click on it to see what it resolves to. And this looks right. It's my data area. It's a subdirectory that's going to be named after my file cache. This will allow us to copy and paste these around later. Version 0, and then it doesn't really matter what the file is called, the frame number, and then bgo.sc, which is, of course, Houdini's file format. So that'll allow us to save all this. Just thinking ahead, I'll put a null here. I'll just say out. I'm going to cache this, and then we'll review it.